to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for It's Almost October. In fact, it might be October by the time this episode comes out. I am going on a small journey of, I am big fans of a potato podcast or potato cast or podcast called The Salt Report. Why am I even mentioning the word potato? I have no idea. And so some time ago there was a certain wizard that was on the show who ruined the show in a very, very good way and in a very, very necessary way and a very, very required way. So working our way through the Salt Report, we've decided to bring on Kay for the second part.
Hello.
I don't know. Hello. Are you like the Empire Strikes Back then of proceedings? I don't know where I'm going with this. Help me. You're going to have to do the steering.
I can't help you. This is your podcast.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This has almost been as long in gestation as episode 8 was.
Yeah,
for Star Wars.
This universe has been conspiring against your podcast for a little while, but we will not be kept down by the system.
We will not be.
I don't know where I'm going with this either.
This is going to just be a incredibly fun, all over the place type of situation, which is always good. For any people who haven't listened to us before, the reason that we do this is because after 200 episodes, I got to do what I want. So there you go.
Yeah,
I've done the time.
I've
done the time. I get to do the crime. I get to do whatever I want. Another reason that we do this is because we kind of do board games and we do a lot about tabletop, but sometimes what we like to do is we like to venture into other realms and other areas. Not like Final Fantasy, but we might talk about Final Fantasy. We'll see how much time we have. But for those who aren't aware and who don't listen to the Salt Report, and you really should, just stop right now, go and listen to a couple of episodes and then come back with the knowledge. Then Kay, who is part of the Salt Report, does an awful lot of cosplay stuff. So we're gonna have a little chat. We're gonna have a little chat about that. We're gonna have a little chat about a lot of other things. I think we need to start off back with why aren't controllers as good as they were with the Dreamcast controller and the little
I've never had issues with PS3 and PS4 controllers.
No,
but I don't play fighting games. It's usually fighting games people that complain.
Yeah. I think what I like about the Dreamcast controller was the little digital thing that you had, which you were able to kind of pop out, and
that thing was a brick. I love my Dreamcast, and I will defend that system, but I won't defend that controller. It's terrible. Why is the wire on the bottom? So you lose like a good 4 inches when you have to pull it around the back so that it plugs into your system. What is the purpose of the VMU? It is kind of a cool idea, but like, why?
It's just one of these things. It was just like, we need a gimmick. Sales are going to be good. What can we do about this? Tamagotchis. Everybody loves Tamagotchis. What can we do?
Well, most games don't even do anything with it. Like, I know Soul Reaver just displays the logo. It's like, oh, cool, thanks. I didn't know what game I was playing.
Hi, an avocado.
An avocado, thanks.
I don't know. What was it? That was the only game I remember was Sonic Adventure. Did
Sonic used it a lot.
Do stuff? Yeah. You could have it like feeding kind of like little sprites.
Yeah, it was like a little Tamagotchi
and stuff like that.
Chow.
Exactly. But then I got. Did you have a Dreamcast from the very, very beginning?
No, I bought it like 5 years ago for $40 at a used game store.
Whoa.
I didn't really have consoles growing up, except for my Game Boy Color.
All right, okay. Any reason for that? Was that just the
parents
you just
didn't want to buy them for me when I was little, and I got an N64 from a friend when I was in middle school, so that would be like ages 11 to 13. I'm not sure exactly when I got it. But then after that, that kind of opened the floodgates a little bit, and I got a GameCube for Christmas one year or something like that. But I didn't have a lot until I was able to buy them myself, which I guess is fair. They're pretty expensive.
Yeah,
so
I suppose. They're still expensive. But yeah, I remember kind of having the conversation with my dad about the Super Nintendo kind of coming out, because I went Mega Drive, then Super Nintendo, and I sold my Mega Drive to get the money for the Super Nintendo, because the Super Nintendo kind of went £249, which I think it was $249 maybe, and then they reduced it to like £150 within the first couple of months. So I spoke to my dad and I went, Dad, like, this is reduced, and he says, well, how are you going to get the money? So I sold like a ton of Mega Drive stuff, which I totally regret to this day, but I was young and foolish, and obviously
2020.
I needed the money.
Another part is that you have to remember that I was pretty young when video games were getting big. Like, the Super Nintendo came out in '93, right? So I was maybe 2 years old. It's definitely too young to be playing video games.
I was 19.
Well, Harvey has decided to join us for this podcast.
Oh, that's good. Hi, Harvey. I've never heard Harvey in the past, so is Harvey just going to sit? Is Harvey going to make noises? That's fine.
She's purring pretty loudly, but I don't know if the microphone's picking it up.
That's good. That's good to
know. Her collar's going to be in the recording.
Oh, that's fine. Well, we can, that's just going to be beautiful, lovely, contented Harvey kind of background noise. But no, I sold it, and then I got the Super Nintendo, and then I said to my dad, says, that's great, what did you get? And I got, I think you could get, F-Zero or Super Mario Land, I think was it, but I think it was maybe F-Zero was one of the main ones. And then I happened to drop to him, at the time, the games were like £50 or £60 for new
They're
ones.
Still very expensive.
He kind of flipped his lid. So, was the Dreamcast on a whim? Had you been after a Dreamcast for a while when you picked it up?
I feel like there must have been a reason that I bought it, but I don't really remember what that was right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the games that I bought for it have been on a whim. They're pretty rare to find in used game stores around here. And at the time I had a lot more disposable income. And so I was just I would see them in the store and kind of look at them and I'm like, well, this is only $3. This is only $5. And I don't think I ever spent more than $15, $20 for a Dreamcast game. And so a lot of times I'd be like, well, I mean, I'm never going to see it again. So either I get it now or I don't get it at all. And I would kind of maybe sometimes I would do a cursory glance online to see if it was just complete garbage or not. But a lot of games I saw that they were complete garbage and I bought them anyway. See The Ring, Terror's Realm. Because I was like, this is definitely garbage, but I gotta.
I have no choice. I've got to experience it. I've got to take one for the team.
And that game's a trip for sure. But and I bought a lot of them that were really, really weird, and that I knew were really weird. I bought Illbleed. I bought Seaman. I think Seaman was kind of on a whim because I was like, this looks really weird, and it was. But
did you get the microphone with it? Because you're not meant to speak to.
Yeah, I got the microphone with it.
Wow.
You can't play it otherwise.
At all?
Not really. No, it's it's mostly voice interface. So.
See, I remember at the time when I got my Dreamcast is that it was the time just before kind of eBay had really, really taken off. So I was in one of those, it's basically a pawn shop, but they kind of I guess they kind of made it more attractive and they called it kind of cash converters or something, or cash masters.
Less stolen merchandise.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Nicked out the back of somebody's car, at 2 p.m. up for sale.
Or just,
at 4 p.m.
the store.
Kind of thing. Exactly. It's like, okay, so what do you want to do? Well, you can either be involved in a retail team or you can be involved in a recovery team. What's the recovery team? Well, do you have a set of black leather gloves at all? How are you at crawling through windows?
Okay, how good are you at picking locks?
Exactly. Do you have a previous rap sheet or criminal record that you might kind of...
I should mention, it's not usually the pawn shop employees that are the people stealing the merchandise and selling it, but...
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's an awful thing to automatically assume. But anyway, this was before the days of eBay, so I went in and sitting on the shelf, there was like a copy. There was Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, and they were asking like, I think they were asking like £10 each at the time, and I had to get it. I went through a kind of a wave of getting things like Skies of Arcadia.
I've got that one.
And there was I finished that game. I actually sat and played and completed that game. Did you get a big collection of the Dreamcast stuff?
No, it's not a huge collection, but good 10, 15 games. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many games that are good that you can still play for Dreamcast now. Like I think people might actually still have Phantasy Star Online servers, but that's not really a game you can just pick up and play anymore.
I know. I'm just gonna jump into this. It's not like Final Fantasy 11.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. You can still kind of play. I think it just went. I think I ended up selling mine, or I think it broke, and then I ended up kind of just selling the games, because at that point any Dreamcast that I tried to pick up was kind of like continuing to kind of.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem with these consoles in general.
No, it's not good. And they're obviously the fact that they're wasting 4 inches of controller wire by the way the wire is. Anyway, but no, I'm bringing up the Dreamcast because I say Dreamcast to people and they're just like, what are you talking about? What is this? Some kind of Netflix show? No, it's not. It's an actual console. So it was. It's
an old ass video game console.
Oh, such a good ass video game. It was robbed, but then
mistakes were made with the Dreamcast.
They didn't admit it until like later on. And there's always like, you see it at least like once every 18 months or 2 years. Somebody writes like a thought piece about why the Dreamcast was the best console there ever was, and kind of was robbed at the time by kind of everything else that came out and was sold better and everything like that at the time. Because I think everyone at the time was like, Sega, yeah, this will rock, and then it kind of didn't rock.
Yeah,
it failed. Absolutely disgusting.
One huge problem the Dreamcast had is that there is no really adequate copy protection on the discs. They're just CDRs. And so piracy was a huge issue with the Dreamcast. And I can even getting it so late, I could tell because I would buy a Dreamcast memory card and I would go home and plug it in, and there's like Super Metroid data and stuff on it. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that game was never released for the Dreamcast.
That was it. You could just go to a car boot sale and it's like you're walking past and it's going like, emulator, sir? I was like, excuse me? I noticed you bought some Dreamcast stuff. Would you like an emulator? What does it do? It plays everything. And then there was like the disc.
Is this legal? Probably not, but shh.
It's $10 for everything you could possibly ever dream of. And it's like, really? It's even got Shenmue 3 on it. Which is
no, it doesn't.
It's just exactly. It's turning more and more into a pipe dream as things go on. You know how we said we needed $3 million for a video game? Might need 5. In fact, might need 10. In fact, might need 15. I can't ever see that game. Is that game even out?
Which game
come out? Shenmue 3.
I don't think it's out yet. Is it Shenmue 3 or Shenmue 4 that they're kickstarting?
I think it's Shenmue 3. And I think they kind of went, yeah, we can get this done for like $2 million. Yeah. And then they were like, actually, we might need some more.
That's how it always is.
And then always is for video game. Always is with video game stuff.
It's hard to predict how much a video game's going to cost to make.
I don't know. I'm kind of wondering how much they cost to make nowadays. I was listening to you have rather passionate talk about Telltale Games.
Yeah.
We're not going to go there. We're going to step away. We're going to step away from there. We're going to take off that particular outfit and we're going to put on a completely new outfit instead. There you go.
I have one last
Talk
thing to
out.
say about the video games conversation, though, and that is that I will forever regret selling my copies of Cubivore and Rule of Rose, because those games are worth like hundreds of dollars.
I gave Terranigma in box to my cousin.
I am not
on the
familiar with
Super
that
Nintendo.
one.
It's worth lots and lots of money now as well. In fact, I was being the generous kind of cousin, and he was like, "Oh, I've just got. I think I had an N64, or maybe even I'd gone up to having like a PlayStation 2 or something." And I says, "Oh yeah, here's a whole pile of Super Nintendo games you can have," and they were all boxed. They were all mint condition because I looked after my stuff, and I don't know what happened to them, but apparently they're all worth mega amounts of money, and he probably sold them for sweets, to be perfectly honest, or candy, whatever he wants. It's one of these things. The cosplaying side of things, because it's strange because you see it when I was at Tabletop Scotland, which was the tabletop convention up in Perth, which was fantastic. There was a couple of cosplayers there. It seems to be an expected thing whenever there's kind of like some kind of geek related kind of culture going on. I mean,
I've actually seen events around here like specify like do not cosplay to this event, because otherwise somebody will. I think it's the Obon Festival here at the Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
Is not a cosplay event, and they have to make it very clear, like, don't cosplay to this event. It's disrespectful.
Really?
So then people don't, or if they do, they get kicked out. So definitely, I think for a certain kind of event, they will have to specify whether or not cosplay is allowed. Especially, unfortunately, Japanese cultural events are automatically a target for inappropriate cosplay. So, and some of them they do welcome it, like Nihon Matsuri every year. They're like, yeah, cosplayers welcome. We'll have a contest, all that stuff. But other times it's like, dude, please. Just because we're Japanese doesn't mean that you can cosplay here.
Oh my goodness. And it would just be the most loudest, most inappropriate costume they could find as well that would rock up.
They're wearing a kimono and they've got it wrapped the wrong way. I don't remember if it's right or over left or left over right that's incorrect, but whichever way is the wrong way, that's how it's wrapped.
Wearing some Nikes.
Then some Nikes, yeah. Full geisha face paint, like the racist one, yeah. I think most cosplayers are smart enough not to do that, at least, but...
You probably. Wearing the Scarlett Johansson face mask. That's so wrong. That probably would happen. There's bound to have been folk that would cosplay as Scarlett Johansson. You kind of like, here's my Ghost in the Shell character. And
I think most Ghost in the Shell cosplayers just cosplay from the anime. The outfits are better.
How did you get into it, though? Because it's not... Like, is it? Maybe you can explain. Is it one of these hobbies that you kind of just fall into accidentally, or did you sit down and consciously go, I want to do something slightly different, or how did you get into it?
Little column A, little column B. I had so this was when I was in high school. I was working my first ever job at a grocery store as a cashier, and I had a friend there who was another cashier who. And we kind of became friends over the job, and she was a cosplayer. And she told me about the local convention, Anime Bonsai, which at the time was still at the Sheridan Hotel. They've since moved to a convention center in Davis County. But it was really tiny then, and she was talking about cosplay, and I kind of was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I got into it from there. I took sewing lessons at Joanne Fabrics, and just worked from there. Practiced a lot, got good. Once I started sewing, I realized I really enjoyed it, so it kind of took off from there.
Is it kind of? Do you remember the first piece? Of course, you must remember the first piece that you kind of did.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly what order they occurred in, because when I went to this Anime Bonds and I didn't cosplay, and then the following spring I went to SoccerCon 2010 with these people, and that was my first out-of-state convention. and I would not go back for another 8 years. But because I went this past spring, and that was the first time I'd gone in a long time. But I also went to Penny Arcade Expo one year, and my friends and I dressed as Pikmin. So that might have been first.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of that anymore. It was so long ago. But we made little hats and dressed all in our corresponding colors. And
what color did you go as?
I was the blue Pikmin, and my friends were the red and yellow Pikmin.
Did you blue your face up? Did you put blue makeup on and stuff?
No, we just wore the hats.
You didn't?
No. Didn't want to deal with the face paint. Face paint is a really good way to either elevate your cosplay or to make it way worse.
But why? No, I don't get that. I mean, surely, face paint is the best way to do it. I mean, you've got to, blue.
If you do it well, but I was 18.
Okay.
Years later, I would do Undying the Undying and do a good job on my face paint, but that takes hours.
Is it like I've just spent sewing myself into this costume. I've now got to spend 3.5 hours kind of applying the necessary.
You got to put the makeup on before you put on the costume, or else you'll blue your costume too.
See, this is why you're on here. It's always like a case. This is like an unknown universe to me completely. Because normally it's like I see cosplayers and I'm like, yeah, I can't even. I don't even want to say hello or anything in case I say something that just makes me sound like an idiot. And
you should always say
that's really nice work. That's really, really nice work. That's really, really, it's like, and how long did it take to make that kind of thing? And it's just, don't want to sound like a fool.
My favorite video ever was of these 3 cosplayers. They're dressed as Sailor Moon characters. And she made a post on Tumblr and she was like, so we got interviewed by a local news station about our costumes. And I took a screenshot at the moment where they asked us how much our costumes cost, and the looks on their faces are incredible. Like, there's like,
Because that's one of the things, isn't it? It's like, it's not, do you know what? It's one of these strange things that still seems to be, is it gone commercial? Can you make cosplaying completely kind of commercial? Because I was thinking about
a couple people have
stuff.
Yaya Han, Jessica Nigri, and Kamui Cosplay are the 3 I can think of off the top of my head. And I don't know, 2 out of 3 of those, I'm like, just Jessica Nigri and Yaya Han, for all I know, could have full-time jobs as well. Because I don't follow them as closely, but I know that Kamui Cosplay does cosplay full-time, and she does YouTube videos that play into that. She has a book series. She has patterns that she sells. Yaya Han has a line of fabrics at Joann's and patterns at Joann Fabrics. So I know that like you can definitely make this into a business. But I myself have no desire to do that. But yeah, for sure, it's a thing. It has gone commercial. People can do that. So
yeah, I was just wondering how you kind of because it's not like is it kind of almost like a board game where you can take kind of like your passion, you can stick it in a box and sell it to people? But I guess you're almost like, you're kind of like branding your stuff, aren't you?
You can take commissions as well. I have friends that take commissions and that'll, pay this much and they'll charge like hourly or whatever, and plus supplies, and like I'll make your wig, I'll make your costume or whatever.
So how many have you made so far?
I don't know. A lot.
Is it just like a continuing thing?
Yeah.
I mean, do you kind of like get one finished and then it's like instantly I'm kind of like, right, okay, I'm on to the next one? Pretty
much. I've made jokes to that effect on the Salt Report before, where I basically launched directly into the next project after finishing a new one. Most recently I did take a good week or 2 off because I was burnt out, but I've started a new project again. So here we go. Yeah, I mean, I like it, so I just kind of keep at it.
Is it just, it must be like, do you know what, like you say, right, okay, I'm definitely going to stop, or is it just the case that this is something that I do, this is something that I kind of get on with, and that's what you kind of do? I mean, do you have like a list of ones that you want to make, things that you want to manufacture and stuff, from the scratch? I mean, do you have like different levels where you say, right, okay, I can either kind of get a lot, I can do everything kind of totally, completely from scratch. You can enter into kind of like challenge mode, basically.
Yeah, I do. Now that I've started competing, I do kind of separate my costumes into competition piece and not. So, for example, the let's say like my Mikote starter set that I just did versus the taco costume I'm working on right now. I'm not trying very hard on this taco costume. I'm letting a lot of stuff slide. I don't really care if parts of it are store bought or like if maybe that seam is kind of ugly and doesn't lie as flat as I want it to, because it's not going to go into a competition. It's just for fun. Whereas the Mikote starter set, I like, okay, this is a little janky, so I have to rework it. I have to unpick the seam and fix it. Or like I'm remaking the stockings because one of them is shorter than the other. These are things I would probably let slide if it weren't for the fact that I'm going to be competing in it. So, and I worked really hard about finishing all the edges properly and making sure that everything lies flat and looks good. So yeah, there's definitely like different levels of effort that I put into my costumes based on whether or not I plan to compete with them or not. Because otherwise I would go fucking insane. Let's be real here.
It's like, what's that? Well, she's up in the clock tower and she's throwing bobbins and sewing needles at anyone that kind of goes close, and watch out for that thread because that can cut if it gets wrapped around the skin too much. But I mean, is there ones where you're like kind of like you started on it and it's just like went zoomph and you went, wow, this was really, really easy? And is there some where you're like, I can't turn a heel on this. I can't turn a heel on this. I can't even sew straight. What's going on with this?
Yeah.
I'm going to chuck out of the window. This is just driving me insane.
Yeah, I talked at length about the skirt for my Mikote costume and how I had to make it 3 times on the salt report before it finally looked right. And then on the flip side of that, the shirt was the easiest thing I've ever put together, and it took me like 2 hours. So, I mean, it's individual parts, not necessarily whole costumes, but...
Have you ever stopped? Have you ever like went, fuck this,
yeah,
and just put it to one side and just like said, right, I'm just gonna go as a ghost. I'm gonna cut some eye holes.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna wear it and go woo.
I've given up on costumes midway and recycled fabric for other costumes and stuff. And sometimes I like think that something will be simple, and then when I get into it, I realize it's not. And I have to put it to one side, go back to the drawing board, rework it, do something different. I've actually restarted a costume recently that was one of those where I started it and was like, no, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And then I did some other similar costumes and was like, okay. And then I went back to it. So.
And I've heard you talk about kind of like using patterns. Is there stuff that you would completely kind of invent from kind of like the ground up, or would you prefer to kind of like find a kind of a recognized pattern online to kind of work from when you're putting the costumes together?
It depends on what it is. So for something like a jacket, it's easier for me to work from a pre-existing pattern and just modify it because... there's a million jacket patterns, but then I have had to make my own patterns before. That Mikote costume, almost all of the patterns were things that I had to make myself, or that I based on clothing that I already have. Like the stockings I made based off of a pair of leggings. I just traced my leggings. So it really depends on what it is. If there's nothing like that thing that I'm trying to make, if this shirt is not shaped like something that exists and that would have a pattern based off of it, then I'll try to work out a pattern myself. But if it's based on a jacket, or if it's a pair of pants or whatever, then I usually try to make a pre-existing pattern, unless it's really simple, like a pair of leggings or stretchy shorts or something, then I can just trace them based off of clothes that I already have and just make my own pattern. And that'll usually work out. Usually.
Yeah. Usually, except for these other two that you can't find them because they're buried and I salted the land, so nothing can grow there anymore, ever.
Exactly.
Do you mod stuff? I mean, will you go kind of like thrift shopping and pick up kind of clothing that you can then use for kind of like a kind of like a costume or something yourself?
I used to do that when I was starting out a lot. One of my other first costumes was from the anime Baccano, and that's set in like the 1920s in the United States, and so they're all wearing, suits and hats and whatnot. So I went thrifting for that stuff. I did Yukari Takeba from Persona 3, and I bought a sweater that looked pretty much exactly like hers and just had to cut it and add a zipper. So I did that a lot when I was starting out, but now, I like sewing, so I sew.
It's like part of the challenge.
Yeah.
In terms of the kind of the resource for the patterns then, is there quite a lot of stuff online? I mean, if I was starting out today and I said, okay, I want to, in terms of support, I guess, from the franchises or even the characters you're copying, are there kind of places you can go that can say, okay, if you want, say, this particular character, you can download an actual pattern from here? And is it you get kind of like direct support from the companies, or Square Enix? Do they kind of help people with stuff like that, or are they kind of like leave our characters alone?
So
or we'll cut you?
It seems like recently a lot of companies are putting out cosplay reference guides for their characters. So it's interesting you mentioned Square Enix specifically, because Final Fantasy 15, every character has a reference guide. They're not very good, but they exist, and you can see the costume from all angles, at least, and kind of get a sense for like, oh, okay, so this shawl that Arden's wearing is like has holes in it, and it's not just like a weird pattern or something. Patterns, not really, but a lot of commercial sewing pattern companies are putting out cosplay patterns. Simplicity and McCall's are the big ones. And so they have, there's like an Assassin's Creed cosplay pattern. There's a Princess Zelda cosplay pattern. There's Kylo Ren and Rey, and there's Game of Thrones cosplay patterns. They're not officially licensed patterns, so they don't say, this is a Jon Snow pattern, but it's, it's like a fur coat, and you can tell. And or like there's a woman on the front that looks exactly like Cersei Lannister wearing a very Cersei Lannister dress, and it's like, okay. But so there's not a whole lot of official support in that regard, but a lot of pattern makers now are putting out specifically patterns that can be used for cosplay and for specific characters.
So did they actually, in the guides for this, are they stripping down the kind of the various pieces? So you mentioned, okay, I'm looking at, you kind of like, here's a cloak for, like, say, Arden. Do they actually have that separated out as something that you can look at, or do they just have kind of like a full E3?
Unfortunately, no, which is why I said that the Square Enix ones weren't very good. Because they didn't. A really good one for say, Arden would be to take off the cloak and scarf and show just what his coat looks like, and then like maybe take off the coat and show what his shirt looks like underneath. But they don't do that. It's just like essentially it's just the character model from a bunch of different angles.
Right, okay.
So that's at least good to get you started, but it doesn't really give you a good sense for the layers. And I remember specifically being annoyed with Promptos because it didn't show his patches on his vest and on his pants. It just kind of showed the pattern on his shirt specifically, and then like all different angles. And I'm like, great, but I need to know what his patches say. And they didn't like, take them off and be like, and these are what each one looks like and what they all say. And so like when you go onto Etsy, all of the patches look slightly different. Some are better than others. Square Enix is the one that I can bring to mind right now, but I know a couple of companies did more detailed ones for their characters.
Is it catching on? As it's obviously becoming more and more
yeah, it's getting more
the hobby, you know.
It's getting more common.
Okay.
I think Dishonored did cosplay reference guides for Emily and Corvo that were pretty specific.
Yeah.
And that kind of showed like the pattern on Emily's scarf and whatnot.
So if you're going, like, you can mention kind of like getting kind of like patches for things, so you could go into like places like Etsy and say, okay, I need to buy X, Y, and Z, and there'll actually be people that will make kind of like specific emblems, patches, which you can just like purchase kind of online, so you can use it for the costume rather than having to do the embroidery or everything.
Yes.
Kind of like yourself then.
Yeah, for sure. You'll find all kinds of commissioners and stuff on Etsy and online and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But then also sometimes if there's a specific piece of the costume that is kind of universal and difficult to find. I'm trying to think of a really good example that aren't Promptos patches, but I'm at a loss right now. But the Mikote starter set has a whole bunch of little charms and buttons and stuff on them. You can buy them on Etsy if you want. There's a whole bunch of people that are just selling those, and that's it, and not the rest of the costume. So, yeah, if there's any kind of like trinket or whatever that's difficult to make, and that a lot of people would be like, "Fuck it, I'll just buy it." It's probably available on Etsy.
And that's like a little cottage industry. Then there's a lot of people that's all they're doing, kind of churning out, kind of those little pieces, specifically knowing that people will be buying it for cosplay.
Yeah. Another good example is that when I cosplayed Fang, I bought Fang's tattoos, temporary tattoos on Etsy.
Wow. So people are going that far to kind of like be producing kind of stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool. Is that not like a kind of you can get lucky with what you're kind of making? I mean, you know, for instance, if something becomes popular, I mean, does that happen? I mean, in terms of with the kind of the popularity of kind of films and other media kind of coming out, do you kind of get waves of, you'll see like 1,000 people now, everybody's kind of cosplaying kind of Spider-Man now because of the latest film?
There's always people cosplaying Spider-Man. There always has been. Comics are kind of a bad example of that because they've always been absurdly popular, and there's always been cosplayers of them. But like, especially for like, you know, the big ones, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. But I'm thinking like Attack on Titan. When that anime first came out, I went to Anime Bonsai that fall. So it came out over the summer, and then that October, I went to Anime Bonsai dressed as an Attack on Titan cosplayer, along with a good 300 or 400 other people.
Did you turn up?
Yeah, we all turned up in the jackets and the belts, and I remember like when at the beginning of the day I was getting a lot of photos, and then at the end of the day I was getting none, and it was because they'd already seen 300 of me.
I'm just like that. Move along. Yeah. We don't need anything else.
Yeah, and past trends I can remember, Axis Powers Italia, Homestuck, both got really popular. Undertale right now, well, for a while, I'm not sure if it still is, but for a while it was really popular for cosplay. Just, you know, you definitely see trends for, especially if the costume is relatively simple. As with Homestuck.
I can imagine Undertale being quite easy to do if it's all kind of pixelated.
Well, I mean, basically. It kind of depends on how extra you want to be, for sure. I've seen, and that is kind of what's funny about these costumes, that you'll see ones that are a little bit lower effort, like maybe they just kind of assembled a costume that looks about right, and then you see the super duper extra costume where there's like Metaton, and he's got his theme song blasting out of a hidden speaker somewhere on his person, and made the entire costume, and they got the wings because they're Metaton Neo. Like, you know, it's pretty. You can get more. You can definitely like choose your difficulty settings. You've got the Toriels that are like face paint and a wig, or a Toriel that's like a full fursuit. You know, you can choose your difficulty setting on those. But
I just want to enjoy the story, please.
Yeah,
that's what I'd be kind of going. I'd be kind of going for. But with that, I mean, is the K that's making the stuff, you know, now for cosplay? Do you look back on the stuff that you've made before and kind of, you know, shake your head a bit and go, what were you doing? Or are you kind of like saying, no, I've made the right progression. I'm proud of what I did in the past. I mean, if your skills got to the point where you're kind of like, yeah, I really know what I'm doing here.
It's really
my challenge.
It's really only recently that I started to make costumes that I'm actually happy with after I finish them.
Okay.
Within the past couple of years, I've finally started to make costumes that I'm willing to wear multiple times because I think they turned out well. For a long time, I would be really disappointed in the finished result and kind of stuff it into a closet and forget about it afterwards. So finally, I'm kind of moving on to a point where my skill set's good enough that I'm not always completely disappointed in a costume, and that I will wear it multiple times, and that I'm happy with it, and I'm competing with them. And so for sure, yeah, I look back on old costumes and I'm like, oh, it's so ugly, oh no. But, maybe I'm not being fair. You're always your own worst critic, right? So
yeah. I mean, it's a case of like, when I'm kind of doing the art stuff, it's like I'll draw something and then I will wrap it in a brick and throw it through a window and go, I'm never ever going to try and draw that thing again because it's absolutely terrible. And then the next time I'll put something down like in pen and paper and I'll be like that. Yeah, I'm just going to walk away because that's pretty much as good as I'm ever going to get. And I think it's going to write with that. How long does it take to put something together? I mean, I know it's like you're saying, well, it depends on, that's a stupid question. It's like, how long does it take you to do your shopping? Depends.
Look at my Cosplanner app and I can tell you from some of my costumes, because I mark basically how long it takes to make each costume. So let me see.
Wow, you have an app?
Yes, I do have an app that helps me track this stuff. Where is Ozra? He'll be a good test. How long did Ozra take to complete? 77 hours and 35 minutes on that one. About 3 months.
Wow. And you actually kind of like every time you're doing the work, you're kind of like recording how long you're spending on it.
Yeah. My Mikote costume apparently took 67 hours and 25 minutes.
Oh my word.
Over the course of about a month and a half to 2 months.
So is there, I know you've mentioned this before, but is there like crunch time?
Yes.
On costumes? I mean, are you kind of like, do you try a case of it, I'm trying to plan here and get as much done as possible, but inevitably has there been a couple of times where you've like, let's get the coffee, and the full fat Coke on the go because this is going to be a kind of an all-nighter kind of thing.
It's actually, Azra and my Mikote costume were unusual in that I didn't have that. Because usually I'm trying to finish something the night before. I remember Malon last year, I was painting and gluing stuff hours before I was set to wear her. Like a good 12 hours before. Fang ultimately wasn't finished. I didn't finish the lance because I was rushing to get things done, and I kind of had a breakdown where I'm like, I'm not going to finish this, and then I was like, I'm not going to finish this. Whatever, it's fine. So and I've had costumes where I was pulling all-nighters to finish them. I've got to a point where I'm like, I'm too old to do this shit anymore. I can't be staying up all night finishing a costume the day before the con. So I've gotten better about it, and hopefully this trend I've started with Azra and the Mikote, where I am finishing them in advance of the convention, will continue because it's so nice. It's so nice not to have to think about it the day before.
Is it just like that? I can chill. I'm having some tea.
Just gotta iron that skirt, and then I'm good to go. And I can get a full 8 hours of sleep.
Full 8 hours, take my time with my breakfast. Stare over it in the corner. Do you have to transport it especially then? I mean, do you kind of, is it weird? I mean, I suppose it depends, but would you normally kind of change when you kind of get there, or do you kind of wait until, or have you sometimes just like, I'm putting this on now because it's the easiest way to put it on?
I always get dressed at home before I go.
Yeah.
Or at the hotel room.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means driving in uncomfortable situations, but that tail's kind of a pain in the ass when you're trying to sit in a car.
Keeps getting in the way, officer.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, like, say for Azra, he's got that big coat. Like, I left the coat off until I got to the convention center, just because that was more comfortable. But for the most part, I will be at least partially dressed, get into my car, drive to the convention center, finish getting dressed, and go in. I'll have my makeup all done. When I went to the out-of-state con back in March, we would get dressed, and my friends and I would get dressed in the hotel room, get all of our makeup on and everything, and walk to the convention center. So we weren't that far away. It's just, it's not a good idea to get dressed in the bathroom of the convention center, especially if you have to do your makeup. I've seen people do that. It's never good.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't paint yourself gray in the bathroom of the convention center and then put on your Homestuck costume and walk out.
I could just imagine that.
It happens.
Just imagine that.
And of course, fixing your makeup in the bathroom is different than putting on a full set of makeup and then going out. But because I've gone in and fixed my eyeliner or whatever. But
I've got my bucket here. I've got my sponge.
Yeah.
I've got my blue war paint.
Gray streaks all over the sink.
In terms of, when you're kind of like walking to the convention, is there? Do you get stopped? Do people kind of like stop and stay or ask for pictures? Does it depend on kind of who you're dressed as and what you're doing, kind of thing?
When I'm outside the convention center, people will kind of like ask me what's going on usually.
Kind of like in a worried kind of thing.
No, they're just like, what's happening? Especially now that Salt Lake Comic Con's gotten so big, people will be like, is it Comic Con?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember at least when I was first doing this, people were like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And
folk coming up to you and going, are you okay?
Yeah. People now, like, people know what Comic Con is. It's gotten a lot bigger. So they're like, is it Comic Con?
Yeah.
Is it Comic Con right now? Why are all these people dressed up? People don't usually ask me for pictures. I've had people like poke parts of my costume without asking. I've had people take my picture without asking. Like when I was in freaking Target trying to get a coffee. It is really frustrating. The worst, most recent one I can think of is when I was wearing that stupid Choco Mog Festival costume, and people kept swatting the bulb on the top of my hat. Like, don't do that. But
because they get signs nowadays. At most kind of conventions nowadays, you do get the sign coming up which is saying like cosplaying isn't consent.
Yeah, but those only stay in the convention center, and the Norbies outside don't see them. So
yeah.
But people should have common sense and realize that it's not cool to touch people without their permission.
Exactly. But you'd think that people would go like, oh yeah, I'm just going to check because it's such a cool costume. You must obviously have a sign to say, come and check the costuming and come and check the stitching whenever you want to. It's like, no, just, leave me alone. I'm trying to get a coffee. It must have been really annoying when you try to get a coffee.
Yeah. And like,
and somebody comes
the worst part is that like, if she asked me for a picture, I would have posed, but instead she decided to take a creep shot. Like, come on.
That's just a bit. What are you doing? That's just a bit weird. And probably brag to her friends. You're probably in somebody's Facebook feed somewhere.
Probably.
It's like, look at this cool picture I got.
I'm probably in a lot of people's Facebook feeds, to be honest. But whatever.
Yeah. How do you go from being somebody who's kind of cosplaying to going into the competition side of things? Because that is kind of like, that's a serious thing.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the next stage up. So what made you decide, well, I'm pretty good at this. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of enter the competitions itself.
I feel like on some level I felt that was the next step. Just like, I don't know. I think it's because a lot of my friends are really serious cosplayers, and they do compete, and I watched a lot of competitions, and I was seeing them in competitions. Some of them are judging competitions now. So I had this idea in my head that at a certain point, that's what you do. And it's not necessarily the case. If anybody's kind of freaking out about this, you don't have to compete. No one's going to put a gun to your head and force you to compete. But I had decided that this is the thing that you do. You cosplay for a little while, and then you get good, and then you start competing, and you get better. So I just kind of decided, like, okay, I'm going to compete at this convention. And so I did. And the first two I entered, I didn't win anything. But recently at Gaming Con 2018, I won third place for the novice category. So now I've got my taste of victory, and I got to keep going.
That's it. You're in the big leagues now. You got to move up. It's going to be like, are you going to do like a training montage? Like
once
Rocky?
I win 2 awards, I have to move to the intermediate category and get my ass kicked in that for a little while. So,
is it kind of like different? Is it like a huge difference between kind of like the novice category and the intermediate category? Are these people that are like, really, really hitting it? They're kind of like training their fingers and stuff like that. They're kind of going out for jogs and running and, watching their diet, and they've got the special.
I'm sure some people
kind of sewing needles, and
I'm sure some people are like that, but
they'll be taking it too far.
It for intermediate and novice, the line is kind of blurry because it really just kind of depends on. They kind of say that like the standard is kind of set by like the best person in that category, I guess. But like sometimes with the beginner category, it'll be kind of blurred because there's a pretty big difference in skill level that qualifies as beginner. It could be somebody who's been sewing for years, but they've never competed before, so they enter as a beginner. Or it could be somebody that just started cosplaying and they thought it would be fun, so they entered. Sometimes when that happens, if there's one person that just absolutely blows everybody else out of the water, they will bump that person into the next category and say like, if there's somebody who like dressed as Diva and made their entire suit by hand, and then the next person down, like maybe they bought and altered a couple of steps, and they'll be like, well, it's not really fair, and so they'll bump Diva into the intermediate category and give her third place in intermediate instead of first place in beginner, so that the other beginners have a chance.
I suppose.
But that sometimes happens from intermediate to master as well, but definitely master class is like a league of its own. They're usually making their own patterns. They might even make their own shoes for the costume. Like these are people that have been doing it for years. They might be professionals. They might sew as a career. And so they are definitely in a class of their own. But the line's kind of blurry in a couple of situations, but usually it's like, and they say in the rules for beginner, you have to have made, I think, 75% of your costume from scratch, and then other pieces can be bought and altered. And they'll be a little bit kinder to sewing mistakes or prop making mistakes than they would be in a higher category because you're a beginner. So if maybe the seam is kind of ugly and not straight, they're like, well, whereas in intermediate or masters, if your seam's kind of ugly and not straight and like fraying, they're like, and it loses you a lot more points because they expect better of you, essentially.
Are there certain? Do they do certain things? Are they like kind of like judging the sewing? Do they actually ask to see the costume? Off your back?
They sometimes
do. They actually
some competitions ask you to bring it in on a hanger, but they don't. The ones that I've been to, they don't require it, but they will like. Get up in there and turn up the hems of your sleeves or whatever and make sure that you finish the seam, and they'll like I remember when I was dressed as Malin, they like lifted my skirts and looked at a little bit and looked at the seams and the finishing on that. You have to be pretty comfortable. And they'll ask.
I can imagine that.
They ask, but you do have to be comfortable with strangers poking and prodding you and getting in very close. So
do you mind, sir? Do you mind, sir?
Here, I'm wearing a shirt underneath this. You can totally open my jacket. Yeah, like plan ahead for stuff like that.
Exactly. Just in case. It's like, yep. Wow. Otherwise, you'd have to wear tassels.
Wear underwear. Is there?
Yeah, that's always a first thing. You know, you don't want to kind of fail with regards to that, because that wouldn't be kind of good at all. But is there kind of like other kind of like well-known kind of judges in the circuit that people kind of look out for, that people kind of know?
Yeah.
In there that you kind of like. Yeah.
Locally, I mean, they pick local cosplayers. So locally, some of the judges for these competitions are well known. I'm friends with some of the judges at these competitions because we have similar hobbies and run in similar friend groups. Surprise. They also tend to have, sometimes like bigger conventions will have industry group judges. So people who do this for a living. I remember one of them was dressed as Edna Mode one year, and I just.
Oh, wow.
Could you think of a more perfect costume for a cosplay contest judge, honestly?
I just can't.
But, yeah, they'll have industry judges, they'll have local cosplayers. They're not, like, famous or anything, but they are known to their community, at least.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be known within the circles. I mean, there'll be people going around saying, who do you know? Do you know who's judging you? And I guess the judging will be kind of important. I guess different judges will appreciate certain effort that goes into kind of certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the kind of the master classes of you. I mean, is there costumes that you've seen where you've just been like, that's really kind of cool, but also I totally want to know how you've done that.
Well, the nice thing about these things is that usually you can just go ask them. And I have on a lot of occasions been like, how did you make this piece of your costume? Is this iron on vinyl? Is this applique? So yeah, I mean, for sure, I've just gone and asked people, how did you make your costume? And they're usually very, very willing to talk about it. So
yeah.
Put a lot of work into something, and if somebody's like, how'd you make this? You're like, well, let me tell you.
Sit down. Here, have a coffee. I've got myself a thermos. I'll pour you out one just now. You know, I've got a presentation you can go through, kind of thing. That's pretty cool. I mean, is that where you're kind of heading to? Are you trying to head towards the kind of the master levels? Or you got plans? That's the kind of the end goal with this.
I guess it would be nice if it happened, but I'm not striving for it necessarily. I mean, there's always room for improvement, and it would be great to and I'm always trying to improve on my sewing and my skills, but I'm not necessarily my goal isn't necessarily to compete at the master level. It's this is a hobby for me and not like a job. So I won't be super upset if I never quite make it there. But
yeah. You're not going to be in the next 6 months go, and here's my Patreon where you can come on and kind of support me, and here's my website where you can buy my kind of patterns. Because I know there's a lot of, I know it's like one of these things. I mean, but it's it's like one of these things where there's the temptation to say, well, could I turn it into something I could kind of do full time? But then that's the problem when you turn it into a job,
and I don't want to give it up for this. So
what's the dream costume? Have you got one that you'd love to kind of like make, or you just keep it? Is that not something you would share because it's your dream?
Well, it's I don't know. Everything that I can consider a dream costume is one that I'm either currently working on or planning on making sometime in the future. So it's.
All right. Okay.
I saw there's a cosplayer named Melinda Chan that did a cosplay of the Storyteller Bard set from Final Fantasy XIV, and it looks so awesome, and I would like to make something like that. So
okay, so that's the next one. I mean,
probably won't happen for another year or more, but it would be cool.
I mean, a year's not that kind of far away if you think about it.
Not really, I guess.
I mean, that's a pretty kind of like, we'll have to come back. You have to come back in a year and just let us know, or if you're listening out in the.
So I started
Exactly. So I started this, and I've managed to glue all my hands together. And
oh yeah, I do that a lot. I glue myself to my costumes all the time.
Is it an injury? I mean, is it an injury-prone kind of thing? Do you ever kind of see somebody and they kind of go, glue gun then? And they went, yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't
recognizable looking injuries.
I burn myself with my hot glue gun all the time. I have super glued myself to things. I have cut myself with scissors, sewing needles,
Wow.
pins, X-Acto knives.
See, I don't know why I'm laughing at the fact you've hot glue gunned yourself, but I'm kind of like wincing at the fact.
What can you do about it? Wipe the glue off? Well, now you've just burned your other hand. Congratulations, you schmuck.
Just totally. I'm just gonna have to sit here and suffer until
guess
this
I'll
sucker
die.
kind of dries out, and I can be like, oh, exactly. Guess. It's like that. It's like, and you get arrested, whatever. You get by the police because they've got no fingerprints, and it's like, are they a master criminal? It's like, no, cosplayer. They just burnt all the fingerprints off. We found some hot.
Your fingerprints grow back pretty fast, actually. So.
Oh.
There's no way to permanently remove your fingerprints because the skin on your fingers grows them back after a while.
See, that's another popular misconception just thrown.
Yeah, if you've ever seen that movie, Seven, with
yes.
Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey had to keep cutting his fingerprints off because they were growing back. So.
I remember that. He had his kind of like he's got his fingerless
so he's got band-aids on his fingertips.
Yeah, that's not a nice vision that I want to have in my head at all. That's fine. You know, you live and learn. You move on.
It's a good movie, though.
I'm not feeling queasy at all. It is a good movie. It's one of these good movies where you're kind of like, Kevin, why did you have to be in that good movie as well? Why do you have to be in The Usual Suspects as well? I love watch The Usual Suspects. Crap. And even kind of like, I know, Baby Driver, I can't even watch that now. You know, it's like, asshole. You know, it just made me feel bad about enjoying a good film. I've got The Usual Suspects on DVD from when I bought it originally, and I've not put it back in the DVD player because I'm saying I kind of want to watch this, but I kind of really liked the film because of how he portrayed the character. Now, is that wrong with me portraying the character? But that's beside, that's a tangent and a place I don't want to go. You know, I can't follow you, Anakin. Anyway, I mean, with the cosplay scene kind of growing, or is it growing, or is it just the case with the more and more people are becoming kind of like aware of it because of coverage on kind of like social media and obviously things like Instagram and stuff like that becoming, your Snapchats and your Instagrams and even your Twitters becoming kind of like what people eat, sleep and breathe. Is it growing steadily at a rate that you can see, or is it just something that more people are just kind of becoming aware of, that the kind of the geekiness is coming into the mainstream?
I mean, it might be both. It's a little bit more accessible now to start cosplaying because of YouTube and all these sewing pattern companies creating easy sewing patterns for off-brand costumes, and a lot of Halloween stores have these costumes now. I was in Spirit Halloween the other day, and they had official ass Kingdom Hearts costumes for sale. So then obviously people are more aware of it now because it's kind of gotten mainstream. So I think it might be both.
Yeah. Did you buy any Kingdom Hearts costumes?
I did not.
Are you sure?
If I'm going to dress as an Organization 13 member, I'm going to make the costume myself because I want to do that.
Does that when you see kind of like these costumes, are you kind of like a bit kind of like, I could do better, or are you kind of like a bit, it's kind of,
honestly, they were pretty nice
belittling
quality
a bit
at Spirit Halloween, and I don't want to begrudge anybody who buys their own costumes because sewing is hard, and just because I like to do it doesn't mean that everybody will. So definitely I don't begrudge them, and like these costumes were pretty okay quality actually, especially for a Halloween store. But so yeah, no, I guess to answer your question, no, I don't do that.
This is being insulting. After spending the last kind of like 45 minutes asking you about your processes, and go, do you not just buy them off the rack? It's like, yes. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like just asking, do you do pre-made podcasts then? Just get out of my house, never come back again, leave me alone, kind of thing. Is there any advice that you would give to people that have listened along and have been thinking about it and are maybe making their first steps, what would you say to them? Apart from obviously, be prepared to be burned, kind of thing.
I guess don't take on too much all at once. There were a lot of costumes that I wanted to do when I was younger that were above my skill level, and I really burnt myself out and got really frustrated trying to do them. So maybe don't pick Artorias of the Abyss as your first costume. I didn't. I'm just trying to come up with a random example. But and if you are going to do something that like armor making or something that sewing, if you've never done it before or something, make sure to do some research, and it's easier than ever now to learn how to do these things because of YouTube and tutorials online and stuff. So just do some research and figure out what you're doing before you start, so you don't waste materials that way.
Mm-hmm. Is it expensive?
Yes.
I mean, do you shudder to think how much money you've actually spent on?
Well, the thing about that Cosplanner app is that I keep track of how much money I spend on my costumes, and it hurts.
It's just like
I joke a lot on my own podcast about how I that new game came out and I want to play it, but I just spent a whole bunch of money on fabric. Yeah, that's the reality of it, is that you have to pick one or the other. Unless you're filthy stinking rich. Which I'm not, but
I could get Spider-Man, or I could buy this.
Or I could buy some faux suede.
Costume later on. Exactly. You've got you've obviously mentioned the podcast. The Salt Report is like my second home, if I'm not on hassling you guys. It's basically it's kind of like one of the most free form, talk about anything, kind of easy to get into, non-pretentious type podcasts I kind of listen to, which is why I like it so much. And you kind of never know what's kind of going on.
You can predict.
And you can't really. You can predict at some point there is going to be.
You can predict that I'm going to talk about Final Fantasy XIV and cosplay.
I stayed away. Do you notice I completely stayed away from Final Fantasy XIV because I wouldn't want to embarrass myself, because I don't know anything about it.
I'm too stupid to play Final Fantasy XIV, but it's not going to stop me.
I'm not going to be looking at chat windows, and it's like I listened to that because the latest episode you talk about like the frustrations of dealing with people.
I went on a lengthy rant about people not being nice to newbies.
It was a fantastic vintage rant of epic proportions, and it was very, very well. It was well stated, and it was absolutely justified to say that if you are dealing with somebody who's obviously new to a game, cut them some slack, especially if it's multiplayer, But anyone that's listening just now, if you haven't checked out the Salt Report, then check it out. There'll be a link in the show notes so you can kind of check along. There's yourself, Kay. There's Jake, my boy, and then there's Jesse as well, who is the filthy wizard who we've heard from before. That's kind of about it, isn't it? It's like fun. It's just popular culture. It's a very, very good laugh, and it's highly recommended. And also follow them on the Twitter as well
at Podcast
to
Salt.
Keep up with their updates at Podcast Salt. If they want to keep an eye on what you're up to, where do we find you on the interweb nets?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch as Humanity Upgrade, and then if you specifically just want to follow my cosplay exploits and don't want to deal with my other bullshit, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Crowfeather Cosplay.
What we'll do is we'll put these into the show notes, so we've got notes to show. Thank you very, very much for coming on. Look, guys, if you're listening just now and you're just like, that wasn't tabletop, it's like, well,
deal with
there
it.
There are other creative forms. Get over it.
People tabletop cosplay, just not me. So look up Warhammer 40k cosplay sometime. It's incredible.
Exactly. That is, and maybe you'll have, you'll see kind of like the amount of work and have more respect for kind of what goes in when you're kind of creating those costumes. So it's been a little diversion, and I've thoroughly enjoyed having a chat with you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on.
It's been long overdue as well.
Yes.
No, it's been really,
we've been
really
talking about
fun.
this for ages.
We have been too long, but good. If you want to keep an eye on what we are up to, and I cannot talk, you can go to the various places, Twitter, We're Not Wizards, Facebook, We're Not Wizards, website, we're notwizards.com, we're on Tumblr. I have no idea. That's Jessie's fault. We're on Tumblr. I can't even talk about it. I kind of fell down that well, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't know where I am.
I think every now and again about creating a Tumblr for my cosplays, and then I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, you see, Podbean automatically they've got a button to say, do you want to add this to Tumblr? So they automatically put the episodes on Tumblr as well. But I've never ever seen anything kind of happen off the back of that, and I don't know if I want to see something happen off the back of that, but I'm not sure. We're on other places. You can find us on Instagram. We're on all the podcast catchers like Podknife and Stitcher and Spreaker and Acast and Podbean itself, and we write stuff, which is we're not wizards.blogspot.com. I sometimes write stuff. There's lots of people that write other good stuff on the blog that write an awful lot better than I do write. If you like what you've listened to, then please consider going on to Apple Podcasts and giving us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, remember, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us 5 stars because it's in the middle and it's average, and we are just that little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic. Kay, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And there's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards?
It's a mystery.
No, it's a mystery. Have you ever dressed up as a wizard?
I'm about to for taco.
I don't even want to know that. Why are you just ruining it? And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Kay. Say goodbye, Kay.
Bye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll6s.com. And it's not always about rolling dice. It's not always about placing counters. Sometimes it's about taking the time, the trouble to sew, to stitch, to glue, to work through patterns, to make sure everything fits, to make sure you look fantastic, to sort out your makeup, to step out into the sunlight and to play as someone else for a day. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.